Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of our Growth Chats series on the YouTube channel.
This is what Steve mentioned in a previous video about us trying new things on the channel. And we plan on having these discussions about topics that we think are important, that we have talked about in our own lives, that we try to do in our own lives, that helped us get to where we are today.
That's right. Today, we're talking about growth mindset.
Hence the Growth Chats title. This is kind of the backbone, I think, of all of the chats we're going to be having.
That's right. I like to think that life is it's really nothing more than a mind game. And when you can control life up here, that really helps you put everything into place from a much more solid foundation, I think.
That's true. So let's do a little bit of just loose defining. So fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Many people may have heard of this, but fixed mindset is the idea that your success, your intelligence, your creativity, all of these things are set for you.
So you can't change them.
So you can't change them. So you just have to do the very best you can at what you can do. And nothing can really change. And that's what success is. But the growth mindset is that intelligence, creativity, pretty much anything is a continual process of growing and learning and changing, including relationships. And I have to say, I think personally that the reason why we do so well together, that we've been able to do all of these crazy things in the time that we've been together, like the Airstream, living off grid, changing multiple careers, all of that stuff, is because we both have growth mindsets. Because it also applies to your relationship and the fact that you grow together and know that when you fail, because there's failures in every good relationship, that it's just a stepping stone for growth to continue succeeding.
Yeah, that's right. I like to say there's really one main difference between a successful person and an unsuccessful person. And that difference is that successful person did not quit after their last failure.
Exactly.
That means you're always going to fail. But if you let that stop you, then you're probably not going to succeed.
Exactly.
And for, I think, the growth mindset, what we're talking about here is trying new things, seeing what works, realizing that what you're doing in your life may or may not be the best for you.
Yes.
And the willingness to give something else a try. Curiosity, sure, exactly. I think that is really the spice of life, getting out of your comfort zone. For example, we just did Whole30.
We did, yes. And that's kind of like the normal way a lot of people think about this kind of thing. It's like in a work perspective. Well, actually, it's not. The work perspective is how a lot of people think of growth mindset or success in terms of that kind of thing. But you can really apply it to any portion of your life, including what we just did with Whole30, which was you were kind of feeling sluggish, not getting the best sleep. We were in the quarantine, thinking maybe we're eating too many snacks. And
I think you came up with the idea.
Yeah.
And you told me, not thinking that I would ever go for something where I'd have to give up alcohol
and sugar
for 30 days.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Let's try it. Why not?
It's like, oh crap, I can't believe I brought that up.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing about the growth mindset, is that it really can be applied to any aspect of life. And this is tough. This is something you have to work on, and we are still working on it, because we all like our comfort zones and we all like doing things the same way because you don't have to worry about it. But sometimes that same way is not always the best way. Sometimes it is, but you're not going to know unless you try new things. So we've done this with diet multiple times, because I did it to try to figure out my migraines. We were vegan for a long time.
We were vegan for at least a year.
Yeah. And we've done all sorts of other diets.
I've always been a meat eater.
Yeah, I know.
I've always been a dairy eater.
I know.
In fact, I love dairy.
And the drinking with the Whole30 and the giving up sugar. You can do almost anything for a short period of time. And you learn about yourselves when you do it. We're not going to stick to the Whole30 lifestyle now that we're done with it.
Not completely, no.
But we've adapted and brought a lot of that into our normal eating habits, because we learned that we feel better when we eat differently sometimes. But it can also be done on like the huge scale. So
financial independence, retire early, yes. Quitting your job super young because you can't stand working in corporate America, which was Me.
Or just quitting your job even though you liked it, even though you put a lot of time into becoming, like I spent a lot of time becoming an engineer, because there was more growth and more things to learn and more things to do, and I wanted to travel. And speaking of traveling, selling the successful homes, the definition of success, having homes, the white picket fence
house in the suburbs,
in order to
high-paying jobs,
into a 200 square foot Airstream and travel.
Yeah, can't believe we did that.
Yeah, and loved it. And then now living in an off-grid house.
Yep.
When most people think like basic necessities include a washing machine, or enough water that you can take baths whenever you want, or enough power that you don't have to worry about running your AC at night. Like, those are normal basic necessities for a lot of people, and we've pushed ourselves outside of that.
Yeah, I think the point is the house in the suburbs and the white picket fence. If that works for you, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to follow those rules.
Yes.
And I think that anybody who especially lives full-time RVing,
yes, you already have a growth mindset.
That growth mindset,
at least in that aspect of
whether
life.
They realize it or not, because they were willing to sell, or at least rent their house and move out and adopt a very different lifestyle.
Exactly, go against society, go against what normal is, and maybe go against what they thought they'd be doing. And that's the hard part. Is a lot of times, like, where should you use a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset? Because we're all a mix of both, right? Like, we're not like perfect, always growth mindset. We'd be exhausted if we were using growth mindset for everything. But we try to do it whenever there's a place that we feel like we don't know enough, or we think our views are too set in their ways, or our actions are too set in their ways, or like, what other ways, if you were asked when you should try to adapt a growth mindset, where do you think that would be?
I think if there's something that when you ask yourself, why do I do it that way? And your answer is, that's the way that I've always done it.
Or that's the way I've been told, or that's...
Sure, yes. Yeah. I think those are good candidates. Just try something new, especially if it's not working. If you've seen wild success, stick with it. But I think there's a lot of room for growth if we just accept the fact that maybe there's a better way.
Or maybe not.
Again, we won't necessarily know whether there's a better way unless we just try things.
Yes, a better way, or a better way, not even a better way, a different way to think. Because a lot of this, if you don't put yourself out there and listen to different people talking about different things, you would never know. Like, we would never have known to go RVing, to move into an Airstream, unless your dad mentioned it, because they RV'd.
Well, they did it for 13 years.
I know, but if we didn't have him in our life, that probably would never have happened. We'd probably still be in a house in the suburbs, because we never would have put ourselves out to hear about different ideas from different people and everything like that. So I think that's an important thing too, is part of a growth mindset is that curiosity to hear others' views, especially on the things that you are set in, that you think you're right in, because those are the ones that you have the biggest opportunity to grow and change.
Absolutely. Changing your mind doesn't mean you failed.
No.
It just means you've grown.
Exactly. Failure is actually a really good thing in terms of a growth mindset. It means that you have more growth to do. You have more change to make.
So if somebody were listening to this and they generally like the idea of what we're talking about, but they don't necessarily know where to start, what things to target, what things to try, what could people do now to start adopting more of a growth mindset?
So I think there's two things that you can do. So the first thing is to do what we just did, which is go through our past and figure out the times we have already used a growth mindset without maybe even knowing it. Me with my health issues, you with losing weight before I met you, moving into the Airstream, retiring early, our food journeys. We're doing yoga every day this month, which I'm very proud of Steve for, because yoga is not exactly his preferred exercise regime. He's a weightlifter, but
if yoga doesn't kick your butt, I think you're going too easy on yourself. Yoga can be extremely difficult.
It can be, but it's also just fun to try, right? Like, for 30 days, you can try almost anything.
And I'm getting more flexible. I can almost touch my toes.
Exactly.
It's fun to do.
Whole30. I'm currently reading a whole bunch of anti-racism books, because it's not something that I feel like I know enough about, or have enough knowledge to really understand what's going on in the world. And so I've joined an anti-racism book club, which is very outside of my comfort zone. So the ways that you're currently or have in the past gone outside of your comfort zone and tried to change and tried to just learn new things and have that curiosity. The second thing would be to find those places where you're fixed, which is tough. But like we said, anywhere where you say, because that's the way it is, because that's what I've been taught, because that's what's always been done, because that's what the higher authority says, whatever that higher authority is, your church, your school, your work, your culture, your whatever. Those are great places to be like,
how is this working for me?
Yes. Is this working for me? Is there another way? Just be curious about it and try things like the Whole30 diet for 30 days. Like, it sucked to give up sugar and alcohol and carbs for 30 days.
It really did. It really did. But we're still here. We didn't, I mean,
yeah.
We're happy, we're healthy, and in fact, we're probably healthier than we were before.
We have a lot more resilience than we think we do. We can do a lot more difficult things than we think we can.
And getting outside your comfort zone is when you really start to explore what you're really capable of.
Yeah. Which is why they say that people with a growth mindset actually tend to go farther in life, because they are willing to fail and are willing to keep trying, and might fail at multiple careers, for instance, because they're not finding the right one, but they're seeing those as stepping stones to finding the right one. Whereas for others, it might be like, well, I failed at that. I can't keep going. I have to go back to what I know. And so, yeah, I think change is what we're here for, right?
That's right.
It's tough, but it's what we're here for.
And if you feel like you're kind of stuck in a routine, which I certainly felt that when I was working full time, that's probably a good indication that a growth mindset would probably start to improve your life over time.
Exactly.
To start developing some new habits and really
just a different life, mental state.
There you go.
Said,
there you go. It's a mind game.
It's a mind game.
It's all up there.
Exactly. So I think that's probably good for our first discussion.
Yeah, I think that went pretty well.
We discussed a lot of different things we've done to grow in our relationship together, in our lives. If any of those sounded particularly interesting or something that you'd like to hear more about, we'd love to know that in the comments, because we will be doing more conversations about how to grow into who we want to be, into the best lives we can lead. And we are perfectly willing to share our stories of that.
That's right. And if you have any other ideas about what we might discuss in videos like this, please leave those in the comments below too. We have a number of ideas lined up, but we always want to hear from you guys as well. We will always have a drink in our hand. In this case, this is just coffee because it's the morning.
Tea.
We don't enjoy alcohol that much yet. So it's just coffee. So thank you for joining us, and will we see them next time?
We will.
At some point.
Cheers.
Cheers. Here is to trying new things.
And always growing.
Always growing.